Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Ann Cott. I'm co-chair of Social Media for Global Health, and I'll be your moderator today, along with my co-chair, Lippy Doshi. And we're going to get started with intros as others join us. Social Media for Global Health is an online community of more than 1,000 members from over 45 countries. We provide a space for professionals to share their experiences with using social media to promote health messages, programs, and the impact of global health and development organizations. And if you're not already a member, I encourage you to join us, and you can see the link to do so on the screen right now. And follow us on Twitter if you're interested in social media, job, and professional development opportunities. Our speakers today are from Women Deliver, an organization that is a social media powerhouse in the world of global health advocacy, particularly around issues for women and girls. Kelsey Boyle is Senior Manager of Communications at Women Deliver. She has spent the past decade running communication strategy for causes near and dear to her heart, and at Women Deliver, she develops advocacy tools and communication strategies to increase political, programmatic, and financial investments in the health and rights of women and girls. Rachel Milkovich is Women Deliver's Digital Communications Associate, and she supports all of their digital platforms, including social media profiles, websites, newsletters, and more. She brings a longtime interest in gender equity and advocacy for women's health in humanitarian settings. Before I turn it over to Kelsey and Rachel, just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar will last for approximately an hour. Lippy and I will be moderating the chat box that you see on your screen. If you have questions for Kelsey and Rachel, please type them into the chat box as you follow along. We'll be collecting them for the Q&A period following their presentation. Please introduce yourself in the chat box. I see we have a lot of people joining us, and we'd love to know who you are and where you're coming from. And finally, we will be recording this webinar, and this will be posted to the Knowledge for Health or K for Health Project's YouTube channel. And with that, over to you, Kelsey and Rachel.
Thank you so much. This is Kelsey, and I'll get us started. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Women Deliver, we started with a brief introduction, but essentially we're a global advocacy organization that advocates for gender equality and the health and rights of girls and women. Our purpose is really to convince decision makers, whether that be policymakers, private sector leaders, UN agencies, or donors, to increase their investments in girls and women. And so as an advocacy organization, our message is really everything. And so our communications team really takes a multi-channel approach, just like most organizations. Our external communications includes newsletters, websites, press releases, speaking appearances, and of course, social media. As you can see on the slide, we have a lot of social channels. And relevant for this webinar in particular, we have more than one handle on Twitter and Facebook. Women Deliver has always invested in social media as a tool for direct advocacy to decision makers, but also their sphere of influence. I'll pass it over to Rachel now to go into some more details.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us this morning. This is Rachel, and a deep dive to social media at Women Deliver. As Kelsey mentioned, it is a key aspect of all of our program areas and their objectives. On our channels, you'll see us talking about SRH at large, but also focusing on the thought leadership of our CEO, Katya Iverson. We amplify content from our partners in the global health space, and we share updates and narrative around the Women Deliver 2019 conference, which is coming up this summer. And we all know as social media professionals that this is an important tool for our organizations to communicate with and form deeper relationships with our target audiences, but we know that it's a tool to do a lot of different things. We tell impact stories, we elevate and spread advocacy messages and facts, we forge stronger relationships with our partners, and we attract event RSVPs, we share organizational announcements. And social media is at its core an interactive tool. It's something where we're able to learn more about our audience and field. We learn what matters to our stakeholders, who they're talking to. We get really quick feedback about what they like and don't like. So creating different verticals within your organizational-wide social media brand, I think, is a great way to really boil down key messages, meet your goals, but we're going to talk to you today about how to do that without diluting your message. And then to set the scene, with our very large social media audience, we really take the multi-channel approach on social. So last year we saw our audience grow 1,000 followers. It's a lot on the day-to-day. I'm the person overseeing the accounts on that, but our entire comms team works together to put content through those channels. So the average internet user, this is a Hootsuite report that just came out this past year. The average internet user regularly uses 8 different social media and messaging accounts each day. So we're really looking to use social media to convey our unified brand at every touch point, but that's a lot to do. So how do we accomplish our communications objectives and continue to grow our digital audience, all while maintaining our distinct brand voice and positioning?
Well, in short, there are 3 key items. 1, we only invest in the platforms that pay off for us and for our organization. Secondly, we let our superstars do their thing on social media, but of course with a little guidance and coordination. And thirdly, we constantly recalibrate and reassess our success on our different channels. And we'll dig into each of these in particular, starting with investing in only the platforms that pay off. It's really best exemplified with our organization with a case study on Youth Deliver. We have currently a Youth Deliver presence on Twitter and Facebook, and it's a way for us to showcase our Young Leaders program, which is a fellowship program for emerging advocates under the age of 30 who are doing gender equality work in their own communities. But it's also a channel for us to elevate youth issues at large, including adolescent health, SRHR, youth participation in politics, and of course, innovative advocacy efforts that they're leading on. What's interesting is we came into this second channel of ours a bit organically. Originally, we had a class of young leaders who were quite active on Twitter and told us that they wanted more of a voice and to brand themselves, affiliate themselves with our organization on Twitter. So they did launch the Youth Deliver handle themselves, and for a time, were managing that account. But over time, our organization really saw a need to protect our brand integrity, but also to represent more than just those few select voices who were the most active on Twitter. And so we decided to take over the day-to-day management of that account. It was a good move not only from a brand integrity sense, but also because we realized that our young leaders had tapped into a really powerful and highly engaged audience that was different from the main Women Deliver handle. Our organization continued to not only populate the channel, but really lean into the unique tone that this audience craved. And you can see here some of the recent numbers. It's in the thousands, and so it's actually quite a substantial audience for our second handle.
And so what differentiates Youth Deliver from Women Deliver? And for this presentation, we'll focus a lot on Twitter, but as Kelsey mentioned, there are 2 Facebook pages for the brands as well. So this is actually a chart that my colleague and I put together. I'm the day-to-day for the Women Deliver accounts, but he's actually the day-to-day for the Youth Deliver accounts. So we had a really great brainstorming session where we laid out what we thought were the differences in our channels, but also where we'd want to take them. So just like a high-level overview of the difference, Youth Deliver will focus on youth issues at large and then will focus on the Young Leaders program. You'll see a lot more spotlights about young leaders and the work that they do at a local and country level. Women Deliver encompasses all of the programs at our organization, so including Deliver for Good, or the humanitarian advocacy program, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. So another thing that really differentiates the 2, we take on a more playful, casual tone on both channels, but you'll see that more on Youth Deliver. You might even see a meme or some animated GIFs, which is great. We work together to build an audience, because since we know that they are different, you'll often see us interacting with each other on Twitter, sharing content from the other, and just working together to show the different ways that youth advocacy is important to our programs. The other thing that I want to mention is that where we'll both cover pretty high touch moments like UNGA and the World Health Assembly. Those are things that both accounts will cover, but it could be in a more youth focused lens. And then just another more of a deep dive on some of the examples we pulled from Twitter where the accounts are different. So we have an example here for the most recent World Economic Forum in Davos, where the Youth Deliver account focused on young people who were included at the table in those conversations, whereas Women Deliver focused on the gender pay gap. And we have another picture here of a video we launched recently from our humanitarian program. And then we have a really great photo of the youth team around the holidays. So you can just see there's more of both are conveying important messages for our organization, but doing it in a slightly different way. And then we have another sort of case study example of this in practice where my colleague Sumit, who sees the Youth Deliver handle, and I really did set down to make a collaborative social media strategy at the most recent Partnership for Maternal and Newborn and Child Health Partners Forum in Delhi this past December. So we were launching an updated toolkit called Advocating for Change for Adolescents, which focused a lot on Women Deliver's meaningful youth engagement strategy. And we really just wanted to get extra eyes on this on social media. It was already a download that we saw very frequently on our web pages. So we knew that it was content that our audiences were interested in, but we wanted to make sure that they knew that we had some new case studies in it. And we used the Partners Forum as a great hook. So we tapped into the hashtags and scheduled our content so that people who are at the Partners Forum themselves would be able to see it. You can see some of our messages here. Women Deliver posted a poll about how folks might want to use this toolkit. Youth Deliver shared a fun fact. So we really sat down together to brainstorm fun ways to do that. And then as a result of this approach, since December, we've had 205 downloads of this report. So we're really happy with the outcome.
Okay, so how does something like this work? How does having two distinct handles that sometimes work in tandem, sometimes have different messages? Number one, for our case, we really do have those unique audiences. The Women Deliver and Youth Deliver audiences are ultimately different, and they were built that way from the beginning. In fact, there's only 272 followers in common, and so we know that really these are different audiences. Number two, there's an organizational mandate. It's part of our organization's mission to elevate youth advocates, and we felt this was best accomplished by having that dedicated space for youth stories. But it should be noted that we do have other mandates in our organization. Rachel mentioned our humanitarian program. We have a Deliver for Good campaign, which is all about cross-sector partnerships. And we've chosen to elevate those with hashtags at the time because of these next couple of points. Number three, plenty of content. We do have enough content to populate both Youth Deliver and Women Deliver. That's because we invest efforts to collecting photos, videos, interviews, media coverage, and written content so that the audience there really is seeing a variety of stories that moves our advocacy forward. It's also interesting to note that we decided not to have a Youth Deliver Instagram at this time, and that's because we don't have enough photos or videos to really give that the same attention that we would on Twitter and Facebook, where we have the ability to use other types of content, stories and links and that sort of thing. And then of course, bandwidth. This one is huge. Rachel oversees the main Women Deliver channel, but our colleague Sumit is able to spend some of his time managing the Youth Deliver channels. And so all four of these really are crucial for the success. Okay, the second way that we accomplish our communications objectives through multiple channels is we let superstars do their thing. Specifically, when we talk about that, we're talking about our president and CEO, Katja Iverson. Women Deliver is really lucky to have a leader who's not only willing to grow her and the organization's brand presence on social media, but she also has a natural talent for it. With over 14,000 Twitter followers, the proof is really there. We this summer conducted a social media analysis on Katja's different accounts because she did have more than just her Twitter started. She had a Facebook account and an Instagram and LinkedIn account. And so this summer she came to us saying she was open to developing her presence across all of these channels. And we did know that there was public interest among all of those. There were direct messages to her Facebook and to her LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, we really decided to double down on her Twitter. And that's because it's really Katja's go-to channel. She doesn't feel like she's forcing it. And she has a lot of experience on Twitter. It's also really quick and easy, so it works with her intensive travel schedule. As you can see, she's on the road 300 days of the year. And so she needs to be able to do a social media platform that is just quickly on her phone, something that she doesn't necessarily need to put a lot of thought into. And then also it really works for Katya's brand presence because of the partnership focus. On Twitter, she can easily tag, retweet, and message partners directly. And that is absolutely huge for growing our brand presence and our advocacy work.
And we have an example here of how we work together with the Women Deliver and Katya's Twitter accounts to elevate some of our key comms programming. So you can see here we did some social media takeovers around World Refugee Day over the summer, and Katya was, more than willing to pitch in and lend her account to one of the Women Deliver young leaders. So that's a really great example of how not only are we using the Women's Deliver account to elevate Katya's thought leadership, but we also lean on her presence to help us reach more audiences on social media through our programming. So sort of the points that Kelsey mentioned, working together with someone in your organization who might have an individual account, we recommend working with them to cultivate an authentic voice. We know that social media users are more likely to engage with a person they know over a brand. We know that two-way conversations are crucial, especially on Twitter. This platform is great for Katya because she can tag people in photos, she can tag people in her tweets, she can retweet and share. So it's really great for her on the go, as we said, and then also that she's not forcing it. So this is the platform she feels most comfortable with. That's not to say she's not on the others, but it's where we're putting in more time. So I think step one is integrate your thought leaders into your existing social media strategy. Explore the ways where you can work together to meet different comms objectives. So get their buy-in early, especially because leaders at the top of an organization have very busy schedules. And so the second point, making it as easy for them as possible to post by drafting messages and preparing graphics around key moments. I think that's crucial. Around speaking opportunities for Katya, we work with her chief of staff to prepare for those moments in time, sort of like you prepare for a media briefing or talking points. We find key messages for social media. We find the expected hashtags, and we sort of make a cheat sheet for her so she can look through a really brief document, figure out what she'd want to copy and paste and put it into her own voice. And then sort of on the end with graphics, we do prepare a Dropbox folder with some evergreen content in addition to things that we create for specific moments in time. So we did do that for Davos. And here are a couple more examples of this in practice. Katya, this is a great year for Katya. She was nominated Dane of the Year, so we definitely wanted to highlight that on the Women Deliver channel, as well as her own. I think moments in time like that are important, so we shine a light on her, but also what they mean for our organization. So we have this great quote here from her talking about how the award wasn't just, for her, it's shining a light on the work that we're doing at Women Deliver and how much it matters. But we also, working together to not only elevate her brand, but we're also demonstrating her leadership in the SRHR space, but also gender equality at large. So similar to the Youth Deliver account, Katya's speechwriter is someone that I meet with regularly to talk about these moments in time for her and preparing what, going off talking points, what messages might we need for big moments in time. So we do occasionally draft messages for her account, but she ultimately reviews them and has the final say and puts them in a voice that sounds right for her. So sort of some tips in practice if you're going to take this approach with a thought leader in your organization to be aware of.
And thirdly, the way that we accomplish our communications objectives with social media is constantly recalibrating and reassessing. This one's really crucial, especially if you have a strategy that works today. It doesn't really mean that it will always work in the future. And so multiple channels require a dedication to data tracking and experimentation. And so we put together a couple tricks for day-to-day management.
So if anyone on the call is your day-to-day person on social media, you know that there's a lot of coordination and scheduling involved in thinking over all the different upcoming announcements and programs, and then also at the same time finding fun content to share with your audiences. So if you're going to make a new vertical within your social media brand, I would do so. So I would follow the example with we took with the Youth Deliver account, where myself and the communications person for the youth team, but also Kelsey and our comms director and the director of the youth engagement team, we all sat down and we brainstormed different content ideas, different ways we thought the tone was different, branding, the audience, the frequency of posting. We really just got in the weeds and did a brain dump and found a path forward that worked for everyone. So definitely, hold those brainstorming sessions, figure out what works for you. And if more than one person is managing these accounts, we know that might be the case. We know that it might not be the case for you, but if more than one person is managing the accounts, be in regular contact and communication about social media milestones. So Sumit and I meet once a week to talk about different things upcoming on social media, and it's always just kind of a Slack away to tell each other what's going down the pipeline. Set and revisit expectations about how much each account will post. So you will notice the Women Deliver account actually does post more than the Youth Deliver account, and we felt this approach worked for us because we're still meeting the objectives by posting less frequently on Youth Deliver that we're seeking to have. So do what works for your team and your bandwidth, and coordinate on how to activate each audience around specific points in time, involving both handles in the rollout of the campaigns. So preparation is key for any comms campaigns. So have those conversations early on, and then make sure you're regularly pulling analytics for each handle. Don't invest in tracking software for just one. We use Sprout Social for insights, and so we have both the Women Deliver and Youth Deliver properties in there. And I look at the stats pretty frequently. I do monthly reports on our channels, but I'm frequently in Sprout looking at insights. And then also just, some of the background. We use Sprout for scheduling, and then we also use TweetDeck for monitoring.
So after hearing all of this, are additional handles the right decision for your organization? We created a couple checklists to help you decide for yourself, and we'll go over them now. First of all, the items in place or the items that really need to be in place for you to justify creating a new handle include the following. Are you trying to communicate with a target audience that your main handle really currently isn't reaching? You'd also want to make sure that you're trying to achieve a different advocacy or communications objective with that account. We've mentioned this a couple of times, but it bears mentioning again. You must have a consistent stream of content to populate the new handle, not just repurposing everything that goes on one to another. The distinct brand or voice is also really important. It's another way to justify having a different presence on social media. And of course, bandwidth. Managing the day-to-day, as you all know on the call, is quite a lift. And so when going into a second handle or a third handle even, just make sure that your team does have the bandwidth to manage that.
When are the times you should not create a new handle? Just to really hammer these points home, do not create a new handle if there's no clear differentiation in your audience, the tone, or the content being posted. Your audience will notice and disengage if they see things posted the same way over and over. Don't create a new channel if the handles have conflicting points of view or perspectives, especially to an external audience. I don't think you'd want to highlight, where two programs might actually have differences. Our audience does not have an appetite for this content. This one's tricky because you might not know that at the get-go, but I think if you launch a new account and then you're watching that engagement's dropping off over a couple months, there's still a low number of followers. Even when you're doing pushes for followers, it might be time to retire that account. If the audiences are too similar, therefore messages or follow numbers are at risk of being diluted. Your audience will notice if the content is the same, or if it's, one account's really not being regularly utilized, and they will drop off. We have low team bandwidth to manage multiple handles. I mean, this one's huge. If there isn't, if there isn't the team capacity to do it, don't add extra work for you. And we do not have buy-in from the top. I think this one's crucial as well, because everyone, not only in your communications team but organizational wide, does help with the content for your social media channels. If there's not buy-in internally, it's just not going to work at the end of the day.
So we hope our case studies and our experience with multiple handles has been helpful for you. And we have plenty of time left to go into some Q&A. I know there's already been some activity in the chat box. So we'll start seeking some Q&A, but I'll ask the team how they want to manage this process.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel and Kelsey. So we're going to start off with some of the questions that we received from the chat box. And please keep the questions coming because we will answer as many as we have time for, and we've left a lot of time for Q&A. So our first question came from Jean-Pierre, and he says, it was mentioned that there was plenty of content to populate both Women Deliver and Youth Deliver social channels. So Kelsey and Rachel, did you target a specific type of content format for those different channels? For example, was video content more successful with one audience compared to another? And how do you determine that?
I think that's a great question. Thank you so much. For what we do see on social generally is that video content really does always have the best engagement. And then specifically, Twitter and Facebook both like content that's created natively in the platform. So if you are, uploading a video or doing like a live video, I would use it natively in the platform because you'll see your engagement pick up broadly. The difference with Women Deliver and Youth Deliver's content, we're both very interested in, generally expanding our video and photo assets. I think that they perform well on both channels. I will say on the Youth Deliver channel, it is a space where we can be a bit more, young and playful. So we'll have memes, we'll have GIFs, and that's where you'll see the difference. And because we know that the Youth Deliver channel has, we have 700 advocates in our Young Leaders program. We know that they follow the Women Deliver channel too, but the Youth Deliver channel is pretty near to their hearts. So we'll always see really good engagement on content that features them or their work.
Great, thanks. Our next question is from Catherine, and Catherine was wondering if you employ paid strategies. And since we're focusing today on multiple handles, maybe if you do employ paid strategies, if you could talk a little bit about whether that strategy changes for Youth Deliver versus Women Deliver.
Women Deliver does employ paid strategies. It's actually quite a new realm for us. It's something that we probably have only done for about a year. And our paid strategy is twofold. One is really to meet some of our advocacy objectives, and that's circulation for things such as that toolkit that Rachel mentioned earlier, perhaps for a letter sign-on around key moments in time where we're really trying to work on a specific policy change or an adaptation to a UN document. I would say that, as we all know, Facebook is a bit of a pay-to-play game at this point, and so we've worked it into our institutional budget for the calendar year to make sure that we do boost posts on a regular basis, even now sometimes if there isn't that direct call to action, just because we don't want to see the followers dip. And then, of course, we do have our conference, which is a good marketing opportunity for us. And so we've employed our paid strategy on the main channel to make sure that we're reaching the demographics that we want to see represented at the Women Deliver conference. And so really targeting specific countries that we know we tend to have less of a presence at our conferences. And it's been quite successful. We have not done any paid with our youth channels. And I think it's an interesting thought, and one that I'd like to also pass over to Rachel for her thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's something that we should explore in the future. I think the differences in audience, I would really have to look deep into the stats on the Youth Deliver properties, because my guess would be that there could be some different geography and that would change the targeting when you're running an ad on social. Something that we did do pretty recently, which was really cool around the conference promotion for registration, is that we did multilingual materials, graphics in different languages, and then we ran with the graphics, we ran ads in different languages, and we did that in Spanish, French, Arabic, and Chinese. And I thought that that was a great way to just make sure we're capturing a truly global audience. So I think investing time into those strategies especially is important.
Great. Well, our next question comes from Rebecca, and Rebecca was wondering if you had any tips for engaging staff who are reluctant or nervous about engaging with Twitter. And I want to just expand this because you've talked a lot about Katya's account and what a wonderful ambassador she is for Women Deliver on social media. And I know we have a lot of comms people joining us today who might be dealing with senior staff who would be wonderful ambassadors but might be reluctant or uncomfortable to join Twitter because of the now of it. So in addition to answering Rebecca's question about engaging staff who are reluctant to engage with Twitter, maybe you could also focus on engaging and training senior staff.
Absolutely. I think this, of course, is something that many of our organizations share. And likewise, at Women Deliver, of course, we're lucky to have Katya, who's very comfortable on Twitter. But there are other leaders in our organization who we really want to build their brand presence and their thought leadership, and are a little bit more reluctant. And I think it requires a couple of things. I think it's definitely taking that one-on-one time with them to understand why it's important for the long-term success and growth of the organization. And I think it starts there, and it starts with also maybe employing some tips and tricks for the entire staff, and so they don't feel really singled out right away. Ultimately, you do want those higher level senior members of your team to be the ones who are being the thought leadership on social media on behalf of the organization. But that doesn't mean that it's not a role for everyone in the organization. Women Deliver before any big moment where we're dispatched out into the world as ambassadors of Women Deliver, and at events doing networking, we prepare a cheat sheet for all of our staff on the best tips and tricks for using social media during those key moments. And so, as Rachel mentioned before, just like what we do with Katya before she embarks upon big moments, is we have all of the hashtags, all of the partner handles ready on a sheet, some key messages that they're welcome to adapt slightly. We have easy access to graphics on a shared drive that they're able to download real time. And we do a little practice session together. And I think that's the first step, is making it more of an organizational wide activity. And then I think you can go into the specifics on particular leaders. And I think Rachel can have some more to add with that, since it's something that we're also doing right now.
Yeah, I love this question. It's such a good one. So Women Deliver definitely like invests time for capacity building, and we have all team meetings where we will go over social media best practices. We did that before UN General Assembly, and then I have met with other senior leaders within Women Deliver to talk about social media best practices. And previously I was sort of more on the media relations side, so I really do approach these kind of trainings like a media training. Like we talk about potential situations that could come up on social. We talk about what feels comfortable to a person, what are the messages that they'd want to get across, what makes sense for the type of program that they're overseeing, and we kind of work together as Kelsey was talking about, working on those materials that make them very comfortable when they go to a situation and have to post in real time. And we would never ask someone who wasn't comfortable, to really dial deep down on Twitter or Instagram if it isn't their thing. We know that social media users can detect a voice that sounds inauthentic pretty quickly. Yeah, that's a great question.
So we've got questions pouring in, which is fantastic. So we'll just keep them coming. Melissa wanted to know how many official hashtags are used or recommended by each handle. And I want to follow that up with a sort of a question about the magic number of hashtags. Is there a number that you feel works really well when you're using multiple handles?
This is a really smart one too. I would probably lean towards there's a magic number for particular moments in time. I would say, of course, there are some tried and true hashtags that our different handles use consistently. Youth Deliver has a couple youth focused ones that are quite popular in the field of meaningful youth engagement, and so we might go back to that every once in a while, but because we really want to capitalize on conversations that are happening out in the Twitterverse, it's really about seeing which ones during, for instance, UNGA or the Commission on the Status of Women, or if there is another big moment in time, if it's International Women's Day, that we're using that one first and another one second. And we know we can easily get into hashtag soup and dilute the message that way. And I'll let Rachel take that because this is her area, and she certainly wants to set some parameters for our organization.
Totally. I think it's definitely monitoring if the hashtag's actually getting picked up. One example I think where we were pleasantly surprised that a hashtag really got picked up is we started using those hashtag women who lead around sort of our focus on women's political participation and leadership around UN General Assembly. So that one's, we weren't expecting to want to use that one long term, but we are now because they had good pickup. For other ones that are specific to our programs, I think we sort of mentioned in the presentation, we have the Deliver for Good campaign and we have a humanitarian advocacy program. Those don't have dedicated social media channels. They have hashtags instead. So I think for content related to that, we will always use content related to those programs. We'll always use the hashtag with it because it's part of one of our benchmarks to get it to be used pretty regularly. Shout out to the Deliver for Good team who did a Twitter chat with their Deliver for Good Kenya program this morning that's trending in Kenya right now. So you can see if there's good pickup with hashtags, they're worth using. But if it's not getting picked up, I just, you don't have to stress yourself out about it. I'm not sure if this question is specifically about how many hashtags your organization should have or if it's within a post. So my sort of rule of thumb with Twitter is probably no more than 3 and definitely not more than 2 in a row. And then Instagram, I've sort of read different things where it's 7 to 9 is actually the magic number. And that's where you can do the little Instagram dots so that it's just not hashtag soup when you look at the post.
Really good tips.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. So our next question I think is a really interesting one. So Mpume asks, for your Youth Deliver handle, how do you give voice to the many youth advocates that you have on your network in terms of social media posts? And how do you control that aspect? And I know you mentioned that you sort of made the transition from having that handle led by youth to having it led by the team. So how do you still give voice to those youth advocates, youth ambassadors that you have?
I think there's a couple of ways. One, we have started to be much better about soliciting news from those in our Young Leaders program. There is a form that they continuously can fill out to keep us abridged of any work that they've been up to, any media coverage that they've been featured in, any real key updates on their work that could be relevant for our audience or to share with donors for that matter, or to share with the rest of the team to continue inspiring our work. And so we make sure that we know really is best to as best as we can to understand what the young leaders are up to, and so we can continuously feature that in our pre-planned content. And then I would say that our highly engaged young leaders on social media are really good at reaching out to us as well, natively on the app with tagging and direct messages. And Rachel, you probably know better than I. But I think if we do see something really fantastic from a young leader, we certainly make that a priority to work into the feed, because it was a big decision for us to take ownership of the channel. And we know that we can't allow all 700 of our young leaders and alumni to post on a regular basis. So we really try our best to make sure that we're featuring them as much as possible, and we encourage them to tweet at us, to use hashtags that we're also using, so we can make sure that we're following up with their conversations and replying and retweeting when appropriate.
So Mateo had a question about analytics. Which analytics you found to be most useful in crafting content that reaches your target audience? And I want to combine this with a question that Lippy has, which is really about bandwidth. So do you, based on those analytics, or maybe regardless of those analytics, do you dedicate more bandwidth towards one handle over another? And how do you justify that?
That's a really good question. It's something that is sort of like my personal, not grievance, but I think that we have a tendency as comms folks when we look at social media analytics to really focus on the impression numbers because they're always the biggest and they're important because that's where your reach is. That's where content. That's where we know that Twitter has shown our content to our audience. But it doesn't really tell us a lot about what our audience liked and if it was something that they found engaging or if it was something that made them want to follow our account. So I think the engagement numbers are crucial. And then looking also at those numbers in specific periods of time. If we're running monthly reports, we can see, what performed well month to month, but we could also look at it year to year, week to week, and pulling out best performing content that way. And then with, I think, audience growth numbers are measured, like pointing audience growth numbers to those points in time is important as well, because if someone doesn't already follow you, they're probably finding you because someone shared your content or they saw the hashtag or it got shown to them as suggested by the platform. So kind of like when you pull those insights, looking at what was happening in your organization at the time. And then do we dedicate more bandwidth toward one channel over the other? We're really trying to take a multi-channel approach, and the big four focus is on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Because the output for Twitter is so much, we'll post more on Twitter, but we really see good engagement numbers on Instagram and LinkedIn especially, so we want to expand our presence on those channels. And I don't know.
Yeah, to justify it, I think this one's a little complicated, and I think it would differ from organization to organization. But because Women Delivers advocacy is to such a wide range of audiences, it's important for us to have a presence across all of these platforms because we know that demographically speaking, there is a bit of a difference on who the audience is. We know that Facebook has more of a global presence than Twitter. And so as a global advocacy organization, we justify making sure that we're investing in Facebook to reach that global audience. LinkedIn as well, because ultimately our purpose is to urge decision makers and stakeholders, those in power, to make change on behalf of girls and women. LinkedIn is more of a platform where we can reach those who are more business minded and who have that more professional standing. And so we justify it by understanding the different audiences that we reach on the different platforms and creating a strategy that recognizes the time involved and the messages needed to make an impact on each of them.
So Allie has a question that takes us to a new platform, LinkedIn. She notes that it's a growing area for thought leadership, which I think is true. Is LinkedIn a part of the Women Deliver social strategy? And if so, what's your thought process on posting there? And if not, can you let us know why you've decided not to use it?
Oh, that's a good lead-in. We were just starting to talk about LinkedIn. You want to take that away?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn is definitely part of our strategy and a place that we want to grow. You don't have to post as frequently on LinkedIn, and it's definitely more geared toward by someone's work life. So weekends aren't a great time to post on LinkedIn. We know that. And also, LinkedIn is a great place for our space because we can use all of the acronyms that we love to use. You can use more jargon because people in our space really know what we're talking about. Something that we really enjoyed about using LinkedIn over the past few months is we've ran some ad campaigns that were really high performing. We did specifically a direct message campaign around UNGA tied to gestational diabetes that performed really well. And we could see, we couldn't see who the message was sent to, but we could see the demographic information. LinkedIn has really great hyper targeting where you can see those things. So we recommend that. For the We also run ad campaigns that are in like a post running in a feed. And again, you can use really great targeting tools for that. So we really liked LinkedIn.
Yes. 4 stars for LinkedIn.
So Karen Jo has a broader question, but I think one that would be really helpful for everyone who's joining us. What strategies would you suggest for a small project to help build our following and reach?
I think this might be referring to like a project within an organization. Um, and I guess the closest, well, we have some examples. I think our Youth Deliver program's quite large at this time, but if I imagine it was emerging, I think it probably starts with utilizing the channels that you do have and starting to soft sound some of the messaging um, and graphics and data points around the project to just understand a little bit more about what resonates. Ultimately, you might be building a separate audience for this project, but it's still good to start to test some of those messages to sort of come out of the gate really strong when you do launch a separate project. And then once you do launch, I think you really need to lean into both existing channels and your partner organizations to start that following. So it's really or cross promoting on your existing Twitter or Facebook about a new program launch. Please follow here. I think you need to utilize all of the communication strategies in your toolbox. Send out a dedicated newsletter on it. Join listservs that are relevant to that. I think it makes a lot of sense to perhaps start on Facebook because of the built-in friend suggestion tool. I think that's a great way to start the following. But Rachel, do you have any other ideas for that?
I think it's 100% reiterating what Kelsey mentioned, and also, this presentation focuses on social media, but social media is so integrated into all communications activities. So again, if you have a newsletter with a great following, you can introduce your social media channel there. If if it warrants a press release, you make sure that your new handles are at the bottom of the copy of that. Using your website as well. So just connecting the dots at every touch point, I think, is important.
That reminds me. Website, of course, is a key vehicle. Pop-ups are really effective. Yeah. For new subscribers or to send people off to a new channel. I would not overlook your website as well.
So we're going to wrap with one final question. And I think it's probably pretty fitting to end with this, which is what happens when you need to retire a handle?
Yeah, it happens. It was interesting. That was one of the first conversations we had when discussing what to do with the Youth Deliver handle, if it made sense to just close it or to take on the extra work it would require to continue it on. And so it's something that Women Deliver, I don't know if we actually have closed before, but oh wait, no, we did. Yeah. We did. Rachel can share one of those.
Yeah, we didn't officially retire this channel, but in our conversations with Katya over the summer about her social media presence, we ran the numbers, we looked at the content that was getting posted, what made sense, and we decided together that her public facing Facebook page, really wasn't something that we were going to invest a lot of efforts in. So it's not closed, but we did sort of draft a message for her to post that says, thank you so much for following me. We're not going to close this channel, but, for more updates, please go to my LinkedIn. And that's where we felt it would be easier by leading Facebook users to LinkedIn. to be easier to control the messaging feature. So because Katya gets so many messages in her inbox a day. And then also we felt like it was a good, better platform for her specifically for the thought leadership piece, since we knew that we were seeing such great engagement numbers on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would say be really certain. There might be a time where, or you might be closing because of a bandwidth issue, or because perhaps that particular program is out of funding for the time being, but it might not be forever. And so I think keeping that door open, if there's any possibility of regaining, I mean, we all know how difficult it is to grow and retain followers, and so it's there's a real price there. And so I would say a thank you and a real clear message on where to send them for news in the meantime.
Okay, I think that's time. This is Lippy. Thank you all for the thoughtful discussion. On behalf of Anne and I and Social Media for Global Health, I really want to thank Kelsey and Rachel from Women Deliver for giving us their time today. It's a very busy year for them. And let me just turn it back to you, Kelsey and Rachel, if you'd like to make a plug for Women Deliver.
Sure, absolutely. Many of you on the call may know about our triannual global conferences. Our next is fastly approaching, June 3 through 6 in Vancouver, Canada. We are expecting nearly 7,000 advocates from around the world, and we do welcome you and your teams to join us there. If you can't make it in person, though, we will be having a robust virtual program. And relevant for our conversation here, we already have a Facebook group that we're collecting RSVPs for that we will eventually turn into a watch party area. So we welcome you to go to the Women Deliver Facebook page, RSVP to the Facebook event while you're still deciding if you can join us in Vancouver.
Great. I think we heard some really interesting things today. We heard that it's important to invest in platforms that pay off, that while the brand or owner is the same, audiences per channel can be different, and it's important to tailor tone and content towards those specific audiences. We also heard that different channels work well when you have unique audiences or a multi-pronged organizational mandate, lots of content, and very importantly, lots of bandwidth, and that it's also okay to have to not have the same makeup on every platform, and that it's okay to or retire accounts. All really interesting topics, and thank you again, Rachel and Kelsey. I'll close with, if you have any additional questions, the contact info of today's hosts are in the slides, and you can also post your questions on Twitter and tag hashtag SM4GH. We'll also post a full recording of today's webinar on K4Health's YouTube soon. And if you're not already part of Social Media for Global Health, you can join our organization at the link in the first couple of slides of this webinar. And you can also follow us on our Twitter account at SM4GH. And we will be hosting our next webinar with Population Reference Bureau on March 6th. And it'll be about how researchers can better use social media to communicate with policy, media, and advocacy audiences. So please stay tuned for more information. Thank you again, and see you next time.